In this video now, we're going to take the next step where you've kind of narrowed in on an idea. You've started to think about your value proposition and what makes you different and how you're going to stand out, what type of value you are going to offer to your marketplace. So from there, we start to think about the brand identity, right? And how you're going to take these concepts and this idea and start creating a brand that will connect with your audience and be a business that you can scale into the future, right? There's a few parts that go into your brand identity, and I'm just going to kind of go through this image here that identifies the different parts, right? You want to start with your philosophy, okay? I mean, technically, you could kind of start wherever you start. Most people, it's funny, most people tend to want to start at the logo. And honestly, the logo is something that I think can wait till, like, really the last point, you know? I mean, the logo is not what makes a brand. The logo is not the most important part to a brand identity, all right? The most important parts are going to start with your vision, your philosophy, your mission, okay? When you're creating a real brand, all right? And here's the thing to remember as I say this, okay? When you understand branding well, it can be done quickly for like a Shopify store, right? I don't want to make it sound like creating a brand for a Shopify store is something super complicated, because if you've gone through this process and you understand well the parts that go into a brand, then setting up a Shopify store, getting your theme all lined up, getting your colors and your logo and everything set, none of this is really too difficult, okay? But I want to teach you at the highest level of what I've been taught and what I understand goes into building a real brand, right? And at that level, you know, you want to really be thinking deeply about all of this stuff, okay? As an example, one of the brands that I'm building right now, at the time of recording this, by the time you watch this, it'll probably already be done, but one of the brands that I'm building right now is a print-on-demand fulfillment company, right? And I'm partnered with an existing global fulfillment company, and we're creating a new brand that's going to serve Shopify sellers and WooCommerce sellers, and basically it's going to be in the form of an app for people to be able to install in their store and sell products, right? So where did we start with this, okay? Before we ever did any design, right? Before we ever did the logo, before we ever did anything, we started with a really in-depth questionnaire, okay? Well, before that even, we started with a round table of just sitting down and talking ideas for like 2 days straight, right? This was, it was actually in Morocco after an event that they were there as their company, and I was there as a speaker from Ecom Empires, and we met, stayed at a resort for 2 days, and we every day for like almost 14, 15 hours straight, day one, day two, all we did is talk about ideas, concepts. We worked through a whole sheet of topics to really start identifying these kinds of things, right? The vision, the mission, the culture, what is it all going to be like, okay? What is the language? What is our mission here? How are we different? What are our core principles? What is our foundation going to be like? How are we going to attract users, okay? This was everything that we talked to. We took notes, then we took those notes, and then from there, we even took it another step further and formalized it into a series of questions that we went through and then answered it. Like, who are your top competitors? What are the top 3 things that you are going to do to be different in the market, right? And like, so we went through all of these questions and all of these ideas before we ever got to the point of even starting to design anything, right? Because your design, your function, your logo, your colors are going to come from the philosophy, from the mission, from the vision, right? And creating that concept, okay? Because if you decide, okay, we want to be a revolutionary, modern technology type of company that's going to change the way print-on-demand works for everybody, all right, that's going to be a very different brand identity than if you decide, you know, that you're going to be something that's like, okay, we want to be a very subtle, professional, clean-cut, like bureaucratic type of brand, right? And so there's a difference in the type of contrast that you might want to have, okay? And that's why, people tend to think, oh, it's about your logo and it's about your colors, but there's so many things. Believe me, design does play an important part, and your logo is important, right? But there's so many other things that go into a brand identity, and so these are some of the things that you should be thinking about. What is your vision? What is your company culture going to be like? Are you a fun company? Are you a tech company? Are you a professional company? And again, I'm not saying that it has to be just one or the other, but you might have a very different type of reality. Okay, like there are companies, for example, with explicit words, and for my training, I don't want to offend anybody, so I try not to ever swear in like the videos that I do, but there are companies out there like where right in the branding they use words like that. There's a company called American As, and the last word is F-U-C-K, right? And that is a brand, right? And that's a multi-million-dollar brand. So if that offends you, it's fine. You weren't part of their culture, okay? But if there's a whole part of that culture that they knew there were other people, right? And they sell patriotic types of print-on-demand items and things like that. So that was the culture that they wanted. They wanted to be bold. They wanted to be polarizing. They wanted to have a really loud, in-your-face type of message, okay? And so like that's very different from, say, a company like Sugar and Cotton, which is very just kind of, fluffy, almost kind of bland in a way, honestly. So, I mean, what they do works very well for them, don't get me wrong, but, like there's so much more, there's such a difference in the personality, right? You need to have a personality in what you're doing, okay? The language is going to reflect your personality. How are you going to speak? What type of tone are you going to have? What type of words and grammar are you going to use, right? How are you going to communicate with your customers? What channels are you going to use? And so all of these things are going to play a part in the identity that you're creating. Now, to narrow that in a little bit, right? Because you want to, like, when you're thinking about your identity, there are basically 12 archetypes, okay? And an archetype is just a fancy word for personality, right? There's like basically 12 personality traits that are out there that you can anchor your brand identity, okay? And these are them, okay? I didn't make this up. This is what they are, okay? There's 12 of them. And you can look at examples of each one of these types of companies. Now, so for example, this is what helps you create your brand identity, right? And this is why this is important. And again, let me just take a step back here. And some of you may be like, man, Nick, I'm just trying to set up a one-product Shopify store, or I'm just trying to set up this store and sell some products. And look, that's fine. But, again, I'm trying to teach you at the highest level of what people do when they're sitting down and working on multi-million-dollar brands that they're trying to build. So this is, what you're going to do. You're going to think about the identity, and these archetypes are where you can anchor an identity like that. So, for example, if you look at Apple here, okay, the creator. So if they are anchoring their identity in the creator, that's their archetype, then everything that they do here, that's what's going to be in the center, right? The creator, that's going to shape their language, their logo, their culture, their vision, their mission, everything that, their behavior. Nike as the hero. Nike's a great example. You can see this so bold in all of their advertising, the type of shirts that they do, the type of athletes they get to represent their brand, the type of message that they have, right? They are anchored in that idea of the hero. Okay, so to break it down a little bit more to some of the characteristics, I'm not going to read through all of these. I just want to give you this information and maybe look at a couple examples, like the Explorer. Okay, I consulted briefly with a company once that and sometimes people don't quite understand this. Like even existing companies that might be really good at manufacturing something or have a product idea might not even necessarily understand how to create a brand, how to, this is a different type of concept of being able to create a brand. All right. So the Explorer, North Face, GoPro, very obvious, right? If you think of the company North Face is, North Face is a brand that is all about the outdoors. That is all about people that are like, I mean, at this point, it's become a little bit more modern culturalized because it's such a big brand and they've done such a good job at their marketing, kind of crossing over into the mainstream. But when you look at North Face, where it started was very much in the like extreme sports category, okay? And so they were archetyped, they were anchored in that explorer identity, adventurous, self-directed, independent, right? Like these words help to really, when you think about adventurous, okay, that's going to help you as you go through each one of these steps of, all right, this is what we are. We're adventurous. We're self-directed. So that's the type of language we're going to reflect. That's the type of culture we're going to reflect. That's the type of logo that we're going to reflect. Okay. So you can see all the examples here. Obviously, you can pause this and read through it all if you want to go through it. But this is just a really good way to maybe help you get in the understanding of how brands are created and how you can actually use a fairly straightforward process here of choosing what type of brand archetype you want to be, and then using that to anchor your brand identity and start coming up with all of these additional facets that are going to be part of your brand. It gives you direction. It gives you a personality, basically, right? And that personality is important because somebody who is I used this example before, somebody who's like a hardcore biker that rides Harleys on the weekend and is going to be much different than, say, somebody who's like a grandmother who drives a Prius, right? Like those types of identities are going to be completely different personalities, right? If you had somebody that was a biker go through a process of creating all of this, and then you also compared that to somebody who was a grandma that drives a Prius, go through all of this, like you're going to get very different brands that come out on the other end. And that's the idea of creating and choosing a personality here, an archetype to anchor the brand identity that you create. Now, the next thing after the identity is to start thinking about your user experience. Okay, this is called UX, and this is going to relate to the type of experience a person has when they're on your store. Okay, and these are just some things that you want to think about, right? It comes down to function and design. Okay, when you're thinking about user experience, function and design. You always want function to be your priority, right? You want your store to be functional. You want it to be easy to navigate. You want it to be useful, and they can find things easily. They can get information easily. They can see the value in it. It's accessible, meaning, they can, on any device, it looks good and it's responsive and high resolution and easy to read. These types of things, okay? Functional. And everything works. Load speed times are good. Those all matter. But then also you want to think about design, okay? Because design is going to play a part as well in bringing up the value of it, making it more desirable, making it more credible. Okay, so there's a balance of things. I would focus on function first, obviously, because that's most important, of having a functional store that works and operates and is smooth, but then also having nice design elements that are going to really make your brand stand out, make it feel more credible, make it feel more personalized to whatever type of identity you are creating. Elements that affect the UX, we already mentioned a few of these. The user's perception, right? That's the identity, that's the personality you're trying to create. And we're going to look at some examples here in a second so you can see just what I mean about how different that can be when you're designing a user experience. The message and attitude of your store, like how you word your product descriptions, how you create a tagline. Okay, it might be very different from, like we looked at two examples before. One was Boom by Cindy Joseph. Boom by Cindy Joseph has a very revolutionary pro-age type of attitude, right? Sugar and Cotton, for example, is a store that is more of a cute, subdued kind of book lovers kind of attitude, right? Like it's not as loud, it's more quiet and understated. Okay, so that's going to be reflected in how you write your copy, how you create your images, and just the overall attitude of the store that you create. Colors and style, of course, your logo and images, we talked about that. Consistency across all your social media channels, okay? Once you choose that identity, you want it to be the same, create that same feeling, that same perception, the type of content you share, the type of images you use across all your social media. After purchase experience, right? Like what type of emails are you sending, and what does the package look like when they receive it? If you can control that. You can't always control that when you're starting out. Apps you're using, checkout process, these are more on the functional side, like are they increasing the function or decreasing the function of your store? And of course the customer service experience, which should be amazing no matter what. Now let's look at some examples, okay? Here's first example. These are just random Shopify stores that I selected that I think will show you how different a personality can be just based on things like color, logo, design, and layout, right? Here you have this store that, you get a very open, what's the word I'm looking for? Green, kind of environmental feel to this, okay? And it fits well with their brand, right? Like this is like a renewable water type of company here. I don't know their exact value proposition, but basically renewable water, right? That's why you can see hose water tap is terrific. Like they're trying to solve the water problem. You can see that right here. 1 bottle equals 100. Obviously, it's very clear right from the start what their value proposition is, and from the colors they choose, from the writing, from the way that they're using the open space, like you get a very a distinct feel from that, okay? A very open, feel good, kind of environmental friendly feel to what they're doing. Now you take a look at this. This is like not the exact opposite, but extremely different type of contrast, okay? Deathwish Coffee, which is a really successful coffee brand. I mean, just from the logo itself, you got the skull and crossbones. Like, they are clearly sending a much different message. You got this big picture of pirates on a ship in the background. Very dark colors, very bold fonts, blood red word of strongest written on there, really large, right? Even in the live chat, they have their little skull and crossbones logo. So very, very different setup, right? From this to this, you get a different mood, you get a different feel, you get a different understanding, and it's all just in the layout. It's all in the way that they position the product. It's all in the type of imagery they're using, the type of font they're using, the type of colors that they're using, right? The way that they're using the open space and the white space of the actual store itself. So that's just, some examples of how different the personality can be than compared to this. This is also a very different personality. You have this like chalkboard kind of setting with big open clean fonts and cursive letters and banners, and these people standing here on the front looking like they're having a good time in an outdoor setting. This gives you like a very Saturday feel, right? Exactly like they're trying to depict. You get a very laid back, relaxed, hangout Saturday kind of feel to this, and so they've done a fantastic job of branding it. And again, it's very different from the previous examples that we just looked at. And then finally, a last example, this Pop Chart Lab. I love this example because, again, very different feel. And the feel here, they've created all in using the shapes, right? Like they've got box shapes everywhere and really big, bold font. And by doing that, they've managed to blend in with their brand very well, because what they sell is posters, right? So they've created this store that almost gives you the feeling of the posters, because they have the box here, they have the grid paper background, and all the boxes overlaying, and so it's like it's a clever design. And again, there's a big difference between all four of these, and it's all based on design, colors, fonts, images, layout, that kind of stuff. And so that's how your brand identity, your user experience, all kind of starts to formulate from whatever type of personality you want to have. So as we mentioned kind of in wrap up here, creating a brand is about more than your logo and colors. Branding is very intentional, and it's with the purpose of connecting to your audience on an emotional level. Your logo and colors are just one part of that, but you're really trying to connect with your audience with a very specific type of message, as we just looked at in those examples. So just remember that as you're going through. Again, you'll see stores out there that get by with the minimum level of branding, okay? And I'm not going to make it sound like you can't create a store and start selling products with, just kind of a cookie cutter approach, because there are stores out there. But again, I'm trying to teach you here at the highest level that I know of how you can really take it to the next level of designing something unique and special that has a real brand element to it, and is going to be something that you can differentiate yourself from everybody else out there. Okay, because I think that's what it's really about in e-commerce, if you're playing for the long term, is differentiating yourself to create something amazing that connects on emotional levels with your audience. All right, thanks for watching. In the next one, we will wrap all of this up with the branding category.